So Ryan Jones from Trusted Reviews thinks the PlayStation 5 is a flop so far. I don't think I fully agree with him. Yes, there's plenty of flaws with the PlayStation 5. Jim Ryan has the same hair as you do, except it's blonde. But if you're going to have an opinion, you got to back the opinion up with factual information. And I feel like some of that here is not being done, Ryan. Sorry. Anyway, let's get into it. I have big birds on my table. You can trust my journalism integrity. Skip it up and that up. Hey everybody, your favorite man with an ass is now on Cameo. You could get your own personalized video message sent directly from me to you. Link to my Cameo below in the description. I look forward to seeing you there. So I have been very critical of things that Sony has done. I have been very critical of things that Microsoft has done, and I have been very critical of things that Nintendo has done. I know no matter what, because there are people that want to defend their camp because human beings are very tribalistic by nature, that are going to say that I'm a Microsoft fanboy, which it's funny because then when I say something negative about Microsoft, I'm a Sony fanboy. The list goes on and on and on. My point being is that I try to anyway, hold all companies equally accountable because they're not my friend. They are a business that wants to get money from me. It's that simple. Why would I be a cheerleader for a company when I'm not financially invested in them? I'm not in any of the big three. What does it mean to me if I want all the companies to be successful? It means more competition means I get better products. I just wanted to preface this video with that. I think I said the word right. So I know it doesn't matter. People are still going to whip out the fanboy card, but it is what it is. So anyway, Ryan Jones over at Trusted Reviews put out a article called "The PS5 has been a major flop so far." Console that has sold 20 million units has been a major flop. Now, he has some valid complaints in here, but I feel, well, some of them are misinformation, but I feel it could be levied pretty much at the entire industry right now. We're still reeling from COVID and supply chain issues and people working from home and games having to be delayed or coming out half-baked. Halo Infinite, Battlefield 2042, the list goes on and on. But his reasons here are just kind of silly. This is going to be a long video, so get your popcorn, make sure your ass cheeks are emptied, and we're going to have a lot to get into here. So the first thing that Ryan talks about is the price increase that we've seen throughout the world, okay, for the PlayStation 5, minus the United States. Japan has a little bit of a respite before the PS5 price is increased. It increases on September 15th, but the PlayStation 5 price throughout the world, minus the United States, is going up. So I know that, look, man, taking more money out of people's pockets makes them more emotional. We'll talk about that at the end, but I understand it. People are feeling annoyed. Like, it's almost 2 years now that the PlayStation 5 has been out. People haven't been able to get the console, and now when they are finally able to, the price is going to be increased in their region more than likely. Think about how much of a slap in the face that is. Anyway, so here we go. He talks about the price increase first. We're going to move on from that, and we're going to talk about his other takes here. So, despite its strong sales, I've been disappointed with Sony's latest console so far, especially considering how much I paid for it. I would even go a step far and say this is the worst console I've ever purchased. I mean, I guess it's his individual experience. Everyone has different life experiences, but the PlayStation 5, you didn't get an Xbox One when it first launched. Didn't get a PS3 when it first launched. Like, they were pretty rough. The games for the launch games for the PS3 minus Resistance, Fall of Man. Really? Were you there? Maybe I don't know. Maybe he's in his like mid-20s and he was like in middle school, and that I got to remember I'm old. Now he goes on to say here, this is something interesting which I'm going to kind of debunk later with evidence, of course. It is admittedly early days for PlayStation 5, but it's also no spring chicken. He's right, okay? You know, we're almost 2 years into the life cycle of these consoles. Come November, it will have been 2 years since the console first hit stores, and yet there have been very few games that have taken advantage of the console's impressive hardware. Now, he brings up a point here which I'm going to debunk, because this happened early on in the 8th generation. There was a bunch of cross-gen titles for both the PS4 and PS3 where they were cross-gen, and 360 and Xbox One that were cross-gen. This is what he says here, though. The likes of Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Gran Turismo 7 are all fantastic games, but they're also available on the older PS4 console, and while you do get a 4K graphics boost, speedier loading times, and the option to run games at a faster refresh rate, I personally don't think these minor upgrades have merited a £450 investment. I remember getting the Xbox 360 and gawping at the graphics in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and Call of Duty 2. The PS5 has failed to have the same effect on me, and yet that hasn't been reflected in the price. But no, if you remember, that's not true. I remember even Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb saying this on an X-Play episode when the 360 first came out. The games weren't visually that impressive for a while. As a matter of fact, I remember it was either Morgan Webb or Adam Sessler, one of the two hosts on X-Play, that said a lot of people were calling the Xbox 360 the Xbox 1.5 because it didn't really look that much different. Yeah, okay, the games are running in higher resolutions, but no one was blown away because the law of diminishing returns has been taking place for a while now. You know, it's so that's kind of null and void. We've been going through the games aren't as mind-blowing as they used to be since we went from like the 6th generation to the HD generation. Now, obviously, games look significantly better than they did, especially during the launch period of the PS3 and 360. Games look tons better now. But yeah, when consoles first come out, there's not that jaw-dropping moment anymore. Like I remember going as a kid. Here we go. I'm going on a rant. Going from like the NES to the Sega Genesis, or even going from the Sega Genesis in some degree. And there was some points with the hardware where the Sega Genesis was superior to the Super Nintendo. But then going to the Super Nintendo where it had more simultaneous colors on screen. And this is back in the days when you were guaranteed a pack-in game. It had Super Mario World, and popping that in and hearing actual percussion for the audio instead of FM synthesis. Like, the technology was just taking bigger leaps back then, and we're not getting the same leaps now. So, and what's on the Series X and S, if I'm being fully objective here, that's absolutely mind-blowing visually. There's Demon Souls alone, Demon Souls Remake for the PS5 is the most next-gen looking game current-gen looking game that you could get right now. And you can't get it anywhere else. Can't get it on PC. Can't get it. The Demon Souls Remake is current-gen exclusive. That alone right there is a huge win for Sony. The only PS5 games I've played that have felt like a new-gen experience are Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, he says, and Astro's Playroom, and even that feels more like a tech demo, a really good tech demo. It was fun. I played through that with my son. It's short. They should make a full-fledged, like, Astro's Playroom. If they make a sequel to that, make it a full, like, 20, 30-hour platformer. I'll buy that day one. The former made great use of the SSD drive for seamless transitions between universes, while Astro did a superb job of showing off the haptic feedback technology in the DualSense controller. And while I'm yet to play Returnal, he continues, my colleague tells me that it looks fantastic and used the adaptive triggers to great effect, ensuring each alien weapon feels unique, but there simply haven't been enough games in this vein that have taken advantage of the PS5's hardware. Oh, really? I'm going to debunk that right now. Now, he did mention some of these. There's Astro's Playroom, which is current gen only. Demon Souls, current gen only. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, current gen only. Returnal, current gen only. Final Fantasy Remake Intergrade, current gen only. I know you could get this game on previous generation consoles, but it's like top to bottom made for the PS5, and it's PS5 only. I won't count that one. They're saying Spider-Man Remastered. No. Ghostwire Tokyo, PS5, PC only, current gen. So I'm not really sure where he's going with there's no games to show what the PS5 is capable of. Again, I named a bunch of other games there, but Demon Souls alone is quite a bit. Now, you may not like Demon Souls, it's fine, but Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, play Returnal, play Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. And on the flip side, what current gen games are current gen only on the Xbox Series S and X? I don't think there's one my editor found called Shredders, whatever. It's a snowboarding game. That's it. Every other game is cross-gen. So you gotta levy these criticisms across the board. Could we say that there should be more PS5 only games for the PS5? Of course, but if you say that for the PS5, the Xbox Series ain't got nothing when it comes to current gen only offerings. So it's kind of an industry problem right now. And on top of that too, I might as well bring up this point now. Games, when we first started off in the 8th generation, were coming out for the PS3 and 360 for a very long time. Perfect example here, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, came out for PS4, Xbox One, PS3, Xbox 360, and that was released in worldwide September 1st, 2015. It's almost the same amount of time now. You're complaining about all the games being cross-gen now. This is kind of the same time period when we went from the 7th gen to 8th gen. The PS4 and Xbox One were almost out for 2 years, and they were still releasing games for the previous generation, like Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, which many would argue had no business to be running on the 360 and PS3. They couldn't handle it. He continues on, too. The future isn't looking bright either. The only PS5 exclusive coming out later this year is The Last of Us Part 1, which I actually have to buy that today. My editor and I are doing a video on that, which is a remake of a game that launched just 9 years ago. Yeah, that game, I swear to God, Naughty Dog, if that game doesn't knock my socks off and I'm blown away, I'm gonna be rough. I'm warning you now, because anyway, I'm buying that game to do a review. So if I don't like it, you don't have to. Continuing on, after that, the only Sony-made PS5 exclusives I can think of are Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine, but neither of those have a release date yet. There are a few third-party games on the horizon that will be exclusive to new-gen consoles, such as Gotham Knights, Final Fantasy XVI, and Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, but I'd argue be better off buying an Xbox to play those games. Why? Unless Digital Foundry comes out and says there's a huge difference in frame rate or resolution, buy them on whatever. I'm not saying don't buy them for your Series X. I have 2 Series S's and a Series X in my house. Buy whatever. I have all the platforms. Buy them whatever you want to buy them on. But so long as they aren't inferior on the PS5, who cares where you buy them? Anyway, he continues on. The Xbox Series X is suffering similar issues to the PS5. So what are you even going on about here then? With exclusives such as Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5, and Gears 5 restricted by their availability on older platforms, they're all great experiences, but hardly the new gen upgrades we were promised. I agree with that, and especially with Halo Infinite, man. That is... You want to know another problem I have with Halo Infinite, minus the fact that it was released completely unfinished? It is so unoptimized. I can't get it. I mean, they say it can run on the Steam Deck now, but it doesn't run great. Even running it on a high-end PC, if I want to run it at I can't get 120 FPS even on my RTX 3090. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent right now, but it's true. I can run it at 1080p and try to get 120 FPS on my RTX 3090. I can't do it. In that game, you look at it, it's meant to also run on the Xbox One. Why can't I get 120 FPS even at the lowest settings? It just baffles me. It's such an unoptimized game. It's absolutely unoptimized, but let's continue. But the future's looking more positive for the Xbox Series X with upcoming games such as Starfield and Redfall. Did you really think Redfall is going to look exciting? Starfield, I'm going to give it a chance. I'll probably end up getting it, even though I'm not really a big Bethesda, direct Bethesda game. I've never been to the Elder Scrolls games or anything like that, but I'll give it a chance. And Redfall both set for a 2023 release, while the next Elder Scrolls, Fable, and Forza Motorsport are also in development. So what? Who the hell knows when the next Elder Scrolls game is coming out? You're really gonna... Dude, we have God of War Ragnarok coming out. We know that's coming out this year for the PlayStation 5 and PS4. I get your point. But there's also a bunch of interesting games upcoming for the PlayStation 5. We have Forspoken by Square Enix. I already spoke about God of War Ragnarok, which is coming out November of this year. Spider-Man 2 is coming sometime in 2023. Horizon Call of the Mountain is going to be exclusive to PSVR 2. Final Fantasy 16 is coming to the PS5 and not the Series X and obviously not the Switch. And he also goes on to talk about the value of Xbox Game Pass, which is true. And Microsoft's philosophy is any first-party games coming from them will be on Xbox Game Pass day one. But if you remember, there was a big, I'm going to say a really boomer word, hoopla. Yeah, I said hoopla. Where there wasn't really anything big coming for Xbox Game Pass that was AAA at least. And a lot of people were like, I only play AAA games. Why would you spend $9.99 or $14.99 a month, at least in the States is how much it costs, for you only play AAA games, there's no AAA games coming out. You're just throwing $15 a month or $10 a month into the wind. So yeah, when the games start coming out, when we get Starfield, when we get Redfall, even though Redfall looks pretty cringe to me, when we get Hellblade 2, okay. And eventually I'm sure Call of Duties are going to come day one to Xbox Game Pass. As a matter of fact, Phil Spencer said that recently, but it's also going to be day one on the PlayStation 5 too. You just have to purchase it there outright. But for now, if you ain't into the indie stuff or the older games that are on Xbox Game Pass, what are you spending the money on? You're spending the money on paper. Okay, ideally, in an ideal world where there was like a new AAA game each month or maybe every other month, it would be worth the money. But the slim pickings, a lot of people are like, if I only AAA game, why am I spending a monthly service fee for Xbox Game Pass? Because that's what it is. So to say that Microsoft's offering right now is superior, eventually it will be, I agree. But right now, as you're writing this article, using that as a defense against PlayStation is kind of silly, just being honest. He also goes on to talk about PlayStation Plus Premium, how it's not going to have their first-party games day one like Microsoft is going to have their games day one. So you could play any first-party game day one on Xbox Game Pass, where on PlayStation Plus Premium, they're not going to do that. Valid point. I will give him that. I know Jim Ryan's argument was that it would dilute these first-party games that are high production value, and they need to get the $60, $70 per game to maintain these high production, high budget games. But, you know, when your competitor is doing the complete opposite thing and offering them with their service, it kind of doesn't make you look good. I told you I'm being objective here. I'm not white knighting for Sony. Sorry, Sony, you look terrible in that camp. You're trying to offer a similar service to Microsoft, and it's not as good. It's that simple. So look, I'm not looking to attack Ryan Jones. That isn't the point. And look, this is his opinion. This is how he feels about the PlayStation 5. I just wanted to disagree with him and back up what I said with facts and sources and things like that. But you know why this is happening, Sony? You know why people are really kind of disappointed and angry? Because you're doing anti-consumer things. It was John Litterman over at Digital Foundry that said, okay, you want to raise the price of the PlayStation 5, even though it's fairly unprecedented, I believe, in Canada before the price did increase for the PlayStation 4. I'll bundle a game with it then. Even if you don't want to put the boxed game in there because that'll cost too much and it'll hit into your profit margins more. Give a game code then for Horizon Forbidden West. Like, do something. Like Ratchet and Clank. Give some kind of full-fledged AAA game with, all right, we're raising the price due to inflation and stuff like this, but at least now you have a full-fledged, like 40-plus, 60-plus hour AAA game to play out of the box that'll also display what the PlayStation 5 is capable of. But no, we're just off inflation. We want to keep our profit margins up. These are the regions we're increasing the price in. Too bad. That's why this negative energy is around the PlayStation 5 right now. That's why you're seeing articles like this. It's like, wait a second. I haven't even been able to get my hands in this damn thing. I don't care it's sold already 20 million plus units. Now it's more expensive, and a decent portion Not as many as he made it like here, but a decent portion of the games, the majority of them, are cross-generation. I could play them on my PS4. I could play them on my Xbox One, 1S, 1X, whatever the hell you have. Play them on my PS4 Pro. All right, I'm missing out on some of the visual niceties, but they're cross-gen games. It's kind of the same thing. He forgot about that, but it was kind of the same thing, like I said before, when we were going from the 7th gen to 8th gen, and it was early on in the 8th gen. A lot of games were cross-gen. I finally remember the game that made that trend stop, I feel, unofficially, was Dying Light. Dying Light was actually supposed to come to the 360 and PS3, if you remember, and they just were like, the hardware, just no. It's going to be a PS4, Xbox One, and PC game. We can't get this open world zombie game to run right, which, if you haven't played Dying Light yet, you could get it on pretty much everything, including the Nintendo Switch, which is an awesome port. I can't recommend it enough, and it looks amazing on the OLED screen. Why am I advertising for Dying Light on the Switch? Because it's an amazing game. It's my favorite game of the 8th generation. But point being here is wait and see. We're at the same point in this generation that we were in the 8th generation, and there was plenty of cross-gen games. I know Sony is not being as pro-consumer as they were when the PS4 first came out, because they were trying to right all the wrongs they made with the PS3. But let's wait and see. But Sony, you should be paying attention to this negative energy that's surrounding your product, because once you get that reputation, it's hard to wipe it, clean it off. Remember with the PS3? Remember the horrors you went through that? Don't forget them now. Because of what you're doing by raising the price and all the other anti-consumer stuff, that's why you're seeing articles like this. That's why you're seeing people's opinion change. Because if they don't feel like you're there for them in terms of being pro-consumer, they're not going to want to be there for you. Don't ignore this, Sony. Don't think that you're that just because you're top dog that you could ignore all the anti-consumer things you're doing and the complaints from consumers, because you know damn well firsthand it could come back and bite you in the ass. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one. God bless my editor for having to edit this. It's going to be a hell of a ride for him.